voice of one God, your name is loud. Ibrahim told it, standing tall and proud. Now, that music is, I believe it's AI generated. But even though I believe, because I'm not 100% sure if it is or not, the music touches my soul. It inspires me. I love it so much. And that's why I decided to share some clips of that song in this live stream. If you haven't heard about it, it's one of those suspectedly artificial intelligence music created using the voice of Akon to praise Ibrahim Traore. You carry the hope, you fight for the land. Ibrahim Traore with a strong guiding hand. The winds of change are blowing strong. Ibrahim Traore, we've waited so long. You know, I think about it like, even though I know that more than likely this was created by artificial intelligence using Akon's voice, I still love it. And I just want to thank whoever created the song. If it's Akon that created the song, thank you, Akon. Very good song. And if it's by, a random person using artificial intelligence, thank you as well. Very, very good material. But what's up, African families? Welcome back to the African Wahala. We're going to be reacting, for the most part, to a video by Shahid Bolsen. Shahid Bolsen is an American Arab guy with some controversial past, but you know what? I encourage you to go research on Shahid Bolsen for yourself and come to your own conclusion. However, he had some very, in my opinion, meaningful things to say about the revolution going on in the Sahelian region of Africa. But first, I'm going to show you the democratic principles that have been encouraged upon us African people to follow through with. The democratic principle that only gives us relics as leaders. When I say relics, I'll show you an example of one of such relics. This guy here is the president of Cameroon, Paul Biya.
Man!
J'avais précisé que cet objectif devait être érigé en véritable cause nationale, notamment à travers notre engagement collectif à rétablir la sécurité, à conforter notre croissance économique.
A democratic system where you have one leader for 43 years. And during the 43 years, he only amassed so much wealth, became extremely wealthy, while the country remains one of the poorest countries in the world by the standards of Human Development Index, by the ability to generate revenue for themselves, to take care of themselves and their environment, and so many other factors. Cameroon is one of such countries that is extremely beautiful in terms of the natural landscape and the people. The people are awesome. In terms of mineral resources, one of the wealthiest in the world. But as usual, being one of the victims of colonial Africa, controlled by the West, forcing their type of democratic wish upon Cameroon, it's one of the countries not doing well today because they have this guy as their president for 43 years, Paul Biya. He's 92 years old. And in 2025, there's going to be another presidential elections, I believe in August, maybe. There's a presidential election coming up in August. Paul Biya is contesting once again. Remember, he has been the president since 1982, right? They've manipulated the constitution so many ways, and they have the backing of France. So it's possible for Paul Biya to keep on running. Although this time around is running with two other guys, Maurice Campbell and Akere Muna. These two guys are also very old, most definitely future stooges to the French. They are pretty much going to take the baton from Paul Biya and continue along the same trajectory. So this is the type of democracy that the Western government wants for African countries. Also keep in mind that Paul Biya, during these days, is 92 years old today. So if he wins the next elections, most definitely he will. He will become the president until he is 98, if he's still alive. So imagine, let's reverse that type of democratic want for France. France pushes Paul Biya on Cameroon. They support Paul Biya in every way possible. That video that I just showed you was Paul Biya visiting France, getting the red carpet treatment, being welcomed by the French top officials, because that's what they want. They want these types of presidents in African countries, their former colonies. But if you think about it, imagine France had an identical situation. They had a leader that has been their president for 43 years, or the United States of America. Imagine America has had one president since 1982 for 43 years. And during those 43 years, America or France remain one of the poorest countries in the world for 43 years nonstop. And they still push that upon you. And then when you revolt and say, no, we no longer want this democratic system, they tell you that, oh, no, you have to go back to democracy. That's exactly what is going on. I'll show you another guy from Burkina Faso this time around. Ibrahim Traore's country. So the guy that was ousted by Traore. Just one of the clips where he was, given the type of treatment that he deserves. Because in my opinion, these guys have no respect for themselves, and they deserve no respect. They deserve to be treated the way they get treated. It's just unfortunate that when they get treated that way, even the regular people like us that are not in political power, we get some of such disrespectful treatment because of these corrupt leaders, very useless politicians that are forced upon the African people, right, by the colonizers. Check this out.
Video of French President Emmanuel Macron publicly racially abusing and embarrassing former Burkina Faso President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore has resurfaced and is going viral. In this video from 2017, French President Macron publicly embarrassed the president of Burkina Faso, following which the latter left the hall. When one of the Burkinabe students asked President Macron a question about Burkina Faso's constant power cuts, this is what the French president had to say.
You speak to me as if France was still a colonial power, but I do not want to take care of electricity problems in the universities of Burkina Faso. That's his job. That's the job of the president. So on the other hand, I reassure you. Oh, what's this? He's going away. Stay there. Maybe he's off to repair the air conditioning.
Video of French President Emmanuel Macron publicly racially abusing and embarrassing.
In my personal opinion, the guy deserves that embarrassment, the disgrace that he got. The former president of Burkina Faso. Of course, you deserve all the embarrassment, because if you guys are not going to have any integrity, any self-respect, then you deserve to be ridiculed by these guys. They look at you like idiots. And that's exactly what you are. All these African presidents, you go around, you want these guys to love you. They would never love you. They are making fun of you for not having electricity in their country. I'm talking about the former president of Burkina Faso, Kabore. He's being ridiculed, or rather he was being ridiculed by Macron, even though he's constantly going after Macron to kiss his ass. Oh, I love you, Macron. I love you so much. But at the end of the day, Macron has no respect for you because you can't even provide electricity for your people. Now, why are there power cuts in Burkina Faso? Obviously, number one, corrupt politicians. Thankfully, things are slowly changing with the emergence of Ibrahim Traore and the revolution going on. But back then, when it was the democratic principles fostered upon us by the Western government, zero power, I mean, always power cuts, 100% power cuts, lack of respect for the leaders, and perpetual poverty. So why should anybody be upset that the Burkina Faso people have taken their future into their hands through Traore and the other guys in the military to change the course of the future? I'll show you one more guy. So I was making references to the types of democratic atmospheres that French government, United States government, and British government want for African countries. They want us to continue with a democratic system, right? The same democratic system that produced the types of Paul Biya, Kabore, Ouattara, and Tinubu. Let me show you this guy. This guy here is the former president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, another absolute stooge of the West. Now, before I show you Nana Akufo-Addo, right? Imagine reverse was the case where the type of democratic leader that France had, or the United States of America, was a leader that goes to other parts of the world to worship their leaders and gets ridiculed while remaining in power for 43 years, and the people of France and America remain poverty stricken. Will they ever accept such a democratic system? They wouldn't accept it. So it's not a beef between African people and people from the western part of the world. It's a beef between African people and the governments of people from the western part of the world. Those governments that tell us African people that we need to pursue democratic principles, we need to continue following a democratic system because that's what the world prefers for us. Meanwhile, the democratic principles only produce morons like this. Look at this guy. He's having a suit, an old man. Nana Akufo-Addo is old enough to be Macron's dad. He's supposed to be a president. This picture was taken while he was the president of Ghana. A president allowing another man put his hands on him to adjust his suit. Oh, let me make you look good so that you can be presentable. You know, my slave. The young man is telling the old man, oh, you know, you're my slave. You're the old man, you're my slave. Let me dress you up nicely so you can be presentable in front of the cameras. So these are the types of leaders that they want African countries to have, but they would never have such countries. But I've just ranted a little bit. We're going to go into the main video, the conversation, the reason why this live stream is existing. We are reacting to Shahid Bolsen. I said a little bit about him earlier in the video. He's an American Arab. I'm not sure if Said is from, I'm not sure if he's from Egypt, but he had some controversial issues. He was even labeled a terrorist at some point. Let's react together to his opinion on the Sahelian Revolution. Very interesting stuff that he had to say.
For example, Thomas Sankara, or even Sukarno. They always say that they were ahead of their time, but that's not true. They weren't ahead of their time. They were not revolutionary thinkers, if you know what I mean. They were just incredibly astute, mature, sensible men with a very crystal clear understanding about how things should be. There was nothing futuristic or utopian in their visions. They just understood and identified exactly what had been done to Africa and what was being done to Africa. And they understood exactly what liberation and what sovereignty required. You know, if they had been leaders in the West, no one would have called them revolutionary or even visionary. They just would have been regarded as logical, sound, rational, reasonable men who had an intricate understanding of economics and politics and basic fairness. I'm not saying this to slight them, not at all. I'm saying this to emphasize the heinous criminality of the Western power structure and how it has dealt with Africa. Because if you were a leader in Africa in the 1950s, the 1960s, the 70s, or the 80s, and you had a sound mind, a rational mind, you had an understanding of politics and economics, and you had an understanding of what's required for sovereignty and fairness, well, that made you a revolutionary, calling for pursuing basic fairness and sovereignty and independence for an African leader, saying things and doing things and implementing policies that just made sense for your nation, constituted rebellion. No, they weren't ahead of their time. Time refused to advance. Time was being held back, especially in Africa. The West, Europe, the UK, and America refused to allow Africa to exist in the present day. Not just Africa, of course, all across the global South. But nowhere was this more the case than in Africa. You understand? I pointed out before, more than once, relationships between countries, between continents evolve and develop and change over time. We've seen drastic changes in international relationships in just the last 20 years. In fact, we've seen drastic changes in just the last 4 or 5 years.
Speaking about some of those changes, you think about the United States of America and its policies on the Middle East. It has always been about, let's make sure they follow our democratic principles. Let's make sure that we follow, policies that would be beneficial for the American states. That's the United States of America's principles for the Middle East. But recently, the United States of America has been traveling all around Qatar. We saw Donald Trump in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, asking them for business partnerships. Oh, come invest $5 trillion in the US. You see the United States President Donald Trump making an announcement that, listen, it's time for us, Iran. We and Iran have to come together and become friends. And if you don't want to be friends, then we can become enemies. Well, rather, we can remain enemies. So the United States of America is changing its international relationships. So why the hell is that a problem for the same United States of America when Burkina Faso decides to change its international relationships, cutting off the relationship with France and building up relationship with Russia? What is their problem? It's just hypocrisy.
Even the last 100 days, to be honest. But the West's relationship with Africa has remained essentially the same for 1,000 years. Subjugation and extraction, looting and pillage. So for Lumumba or Nkrumah, it was the 1960s. But for the West, it was still the 1860s, the 1760s, the 1660s. For the West, Africa was frozen in time, and they kept it frozen in time by force. They kept it frozen in time by violence, by assassination, by coups, by invasions, and by hostage governments and collaborators. They kept it frozen in time by predatory lending, by neoliberal policy coercion, by manufactured debt and abusive trade policies.
Manufactured debt, IMF loans, World Bank loans, all these institutions have been giving out loans to African countries for so long. To what benefit has it been to the African people? Haven't we still remained the poorest? Haven't the economic turmoil and the political instability only increased since we started taking those fake loans from the IMF and the World Bank? It's all a ploy to keep the economies under their control and to have us remaining at the bottom of the food chain. So this man is saying a lot of good things.
When they can't send soldiers, they send consultants. So no, those great leaders weren't ahead of their time. The West stopped time in Africa. And understand this, when you arrest the forward movement of a people, when you stop them in time like that, you're not just stealing their wealth, you're stealing their future. You're robbing them of possibility. You're burying generations that have not even been born yet under the rubble of your exploitation. Because what could have been created, what could have been discovered, what could have been achieved, it never gets a chance to exist. The mind of Thomas Sankara, the determination of Patrice Lumumba, the vision of Nkrumah, these weren't anomalies. They're the normal, natural, healthy state of a decolonized mind, of a liberated mind coming from a liberated people. They're examples of what Africa would have been, should have been, and inshallah, bi'ithnillah, still will be. But the West systematically crushed the conditions necessary even for normalcy to flourish. You see, you don't just kill the leaders when you kill the leaders or when you overthrow the leaders. You steal the future that those leaders could build. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran that when you kill one person unjustly, it's as if you killed all of mankind. Well, that isn't just metaphorically true. In the case of the leaders that the West has destroyed in Africa, they also destroyed millions of lives along with them. Millions of living and unborn lives have been destroyed in terms of their hopes, their opportunities, their rights, their freedom, their independence, their sovereignty.
You know, I think about it again. I think about the world population dynamics. You know, China, I believe, still has the largest population in the world, either China or India. But let's assume it's China. The same China has a population crisis looming. In the sense that if you categorize the Chinese population, majority of their people are above 50 years old. So they have a lot of old people that make up to maybe 1.5 billion people in China. And then you come to Africa, we have about 1.5 billion people at the same time, but 70% of the 1.5 billion people are younger than 25 years old. So the world is such a place where the Chinese, they've been doing great for themselves in the last half a century. They are now a region to be reckoned with. Absolute respect for China. But they are about to face a population crisis, or rather a demographic crisis, because there's not going to be a lot of younger people to maintain the production capacity of China in the next 20 years if nothing is done about the population, or rather lack of childbirth in China. And something similar is going on in Japan, South Korea. But in Africa, where we have a ton of young people that have been given birth to generation after generation into hopelessness, into poverty, and into a life of having nothing. That's what a lot of our people were born into. Like this man just said, when you destroy good leaders, you also destroy future generations and even unborn people. And that's why we have a lot of people, they are just giving birth to children. The children are born into societies without access to education, access to basic amenities, zero access to human development, resources. And that's where we are today. But it's still possible to convert all these negative attributes into positivity. Because like I said earlier, the Chinese, they have the population, they have the technology, and they have the wealth, but they don't have the human resources. At the current rate that they are going, they're not going to have the human resources to sustain what they have. But Africa, on the other hand, has none of those factors that the Chinese have, but we have the human resources, and it can be worked upon. Just thought I'd put that there.
Well, you can trace the carnage going on right now in Congo today, all the way back to the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. They assassinate the idea. They assassinate the man who represents the idea, so that future generations will look back and go, well, you know, they tried and they failed, so we better not bother. It's psychological warfare across time. Because if you can make a people believe that liberation is impossible, if you can make them believe that wanting sovereignty is naive and that dignity is an unrealistic hope, then you don't even have to conquer them anymore. They'll remain conquered inside themselves. And please understand, when we talk about people like Sankara, Nkrumah, Lumumba, Sukarno, we're actually just talking about the natural state of a decolonized mind. We're not talking about something extraordinary. We're talking about what's supposed to be normal, not exceptional, normal. They didn't have utopian visions for their countries. Like I said, they wanted their countries to be normal, but the West would not allow it.
And to be honest, we would have a lot more revolutionary minds if people had access to education. Like this guy says, all these guys are asking for is for us to have a normal life. There is nothing extraordinary in having a leader that builds tomato factories or that constructs roads for the people. But we've been deprived for so long that when normal things happen, we hype it up, we overhype it. And I can't blame us for being that way, because if all what you've known throughout your entire life is the lack of access, then once you have some access, you might begin to overhype that access.
Back then, the West had the power to prevent it. The relative power, that's the key point. They had the relative power to prevent it. They had the relative power to steal Africa's future by prolonging its past by force. But as I've talked about many times, the West's relative power is receding. That old wolf still has fangs, but the global South is raising some young lions of their own today. They're reviving the spirit of Lumumba and Sankara and Nkrumah. Your grip on Africa is being pried open. And yes, of course, I'm talking about Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso. And all the leaders in the Sahel Alliance countries, obviously, but especially Ibrahim Traore. You know, it's often only in retrospect that we recognize the magnitude of a figure who shifts the course of history. It shifts the course of events in the world. But if anyone's paying attention, you can all see that Ibrahim Traore is clearly one of the most consequential leaders, not just in Africa, not just in the Muslim world, but in the entire global South and in fact, in the world. You know, I said on X the other day that Ibrahim Traore is the most important Muslim leader in the world today, more than Erdogan, more than MBS, more than anyone else, because of what he represents. You know, of course, I had a lot of fake Pan-Africanists in my comment section getting mad about the fact that I was referring to Ibrahim Traore as a Muslim leader, because they only want to identify him exclusively as a Black leader or as exclusively as an African leader. They don't want to acknowledge the fact that he is a Muslim, because in their CIA-produced Pan-Africanism, they're ready to exclude 500 million Africans from Africa.
Okay. Let's pause here a little bit. Mr. Shahid Bolsen, I definitely appreciate all what you've been saying, even up until the Muslim part. You're talking about Traore is a Muslim leader. I appreciate it. No problem. You're welcome to enjoy some of the respect that Traore is getting. Yes, Traore is a Muslim, but last I remembered, he was offered by the Saudi government or the crown prince or someone powerful out there in Saudi Arabia. We're going to build 200 mosques in Burkina Faso, okay, fully funded by us, the Saudi people. Traore said no. We would rather use that same funding on hospitals, schools, electricity, amenities. That's what we want, infrastructure. We're not looking for no listen, religion is one of the biggest poisons in Africa. And I understand this good man, because to me he's a good guy, Shahid Bolsen. He's obviously not sub-Saharan African. He might be from the Middle East. He might be from Algeria, Morocco, or wherever. He's American, obviously. But maybe that's where he originated from. North Africa, Middle East type countries. And we understand you guys are Muslim and that is your first identity. I will explain something to you. In sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of our people have also taken that energy where they identify with people first based on religion before their actual physical characteristics. Ibrahim Traore, to us, this is a revolutionary struggle against African oppression. It's not about religion. You are welcome to use your religious perspective to claim him as your leader and your inspiration. No problem. But you're not going to be denigrating so-called Pan-Africanists for telling you that this has nothing to do with religion. This has everything to do with a struggle for the emancipation of African people. That's what this is, starting from Burkina Faso and the Sahel country, Niger Republic, Mali. Forget about religion. Can you please? We don't want to hear nothing about no religion. We have our African spirituality. Many of us don't practice it because we've never had any experience practicing it before. But this is nothing about, this has nothing to do with religion. And Traore himself made it clear when he told the Saudi people, we don't want your 200 mosques. Give us schools, roads, and educational institutions. We don't want, it's not about religion. Let's just put that on the side. We understand you Arab people, you love your religion so much. That's fine. Deal with it within yourself. Do not use that to influence us. That's what I'm saying.
They're so propagandized in their mind by the CIA and by the intelligence that they think being African and being Muslim is a contradiction. They've fallen for the old divide and rule tactics of the colonizers. Their indoctrinated brains will short circuit over the inconvenient fact that the most admired and the most heroic leaders in Africa today are Muslims. In Burkina Faso, in Niger, in Senegal, even Naledi Pandor.
It has nothing to do with Muslim, bro. That's it. You see, I've also learned not to throw people out, not to throw out the baby with the baby water. Like Shahid Bolsen has been saying, I definitely respect him to a large extent, and I appreciate him coming out and explaining this. But once he started putting religious stuff into it, then it's beginning to sound a little bit suspect. Are you trying to put your religion above everything that is going on? There are thousands of religions in the world, bro. It's deeper than religion. This is about African emancipation. Okay? And you're talking about the best leaders in Africa are Muslims. Bro, relax on that stuff, man. I am from a country that it has had Muslims as the leaders more than any other religious group. Nigeria. Nigeria is shit today, even though these guys have been in power for so long. So it's not about religion. When you bring up these types of arguments, people will have counter arguments to prove to you that what you're saying doesn't make sense. However, I still respect what Shahid Bolsen is saying so far. If you can eliminate the Muslim or the Christian religious conversation out of this, it'll be good.
In South Africa is a Muslim taking the Israel to the ICJ. Just because Ibrahim Traore doesn't wear his religion on his sleeve, and just because he doesn't taqwa signal, all the time like some so-called Islamists, you think we don't get to claim him as part of our ummah? We don't get to say that he's a Muslim leader, but he is a Muslim leader.
Claiming, bro.
He's an African leader who's a Muslim.
My man
I'm sorry to tell you.
Listen, man, my man is being emotional, if you ask me. You're beginning to have a personal argument with someone else based on religion. This is not about religion.
About the fact that you don't want religion to be brought into it. You want to keep religion out of it. No, Ibrahim Traore is fighting those Western-backed, Western-trained, Western-funded jihadi groups because he's a Muslim. Nobody has...
You see, and that's the problem. You know what? I'm just going to let this guy finish what he's saying.
Suffered more from those mercenaries than the Muslims have. Suffered more from their violence and suffered more from the warped image of Islam that spread by their violence. Now, when Ibrahim Traore stands up to those French and Ukrainian-backed psychopaths, he's standing up for real Islamic values, whether you like it or not. From the perspective of Middle Nation, from my perspective, from the prism through which we analyze the struggle for justice and sovereignty and dignity, Ibrahim Traore's emergence is nothing short of historic. I mean, alhamdulillah, we have many great Muslim leaders in the world today, despite what everyone says. We have great leaders, many. But in my opinion, Ibrahim Traore is the most important. Burkina Faso, the land, they call it the land of upright people, has again produced an upright man, not only for their country, not only for the Ummah, but for all of humanity. First, they gave us Thomas Sankara, who was a Catholic, but his life was extinguished before he could ever reach the full, before he could realize his vision. But today...
I have to go back to that religious conversation again. This man, Shahid, said Thomas Sankara was Catholic. I didn't even know. This is the first time that I'm hearing that Thomas Sankara was a Catholic, because his religion is irrelevant in the conversation of African emancipation. I don't know what religion Kwame Nkrumah was, and I don't know what religion Patrice Lumumba was, because that's an irrelevant conversation. Regardless what religion you are, you're viewed first as an African. That's what you physically look like. And you're going to get that work around the world. Simply for being an African looking person, you will be treated a certain way in certain places. So if Ibrahim Traore is coming around today and trying to reverse some of those disrespectful ways that African people get treated simply because they're African, then it has nothing to do with religion. You get what I'm saying? This has nothing to do with religion. We never gave the Catholic religion any credit for Thomas Sankara. I have never heard that in my life. I didn't even know up until now, right now, listening to this video, that Sankara was Catholic. Nobody cares about that, bro. Where I'm from in Nigeria, religion is one of the reasons why Nigeria is in shit today. So from experience, I'm telling the world that religion is poison in the minds of African people. Not saying religion is absolutely bad, but once people put their religious beliefs over common sense, and trust me, some religions have it inbred in the religion that you should throw out common sense when dealing with the religion. Because if you're dealing with common sense, then you have a carnal mind. And that's why we need to put religion aside. Fine, have your religious belief, no problem. Have your spiritual beliefs. As far as you're not hurting anybody else, that's cool. But stop bringing religion into the revolution going on in the AES. It has nothing to do with religion. It's simply African emancipation.
In Ibrahim Traore, we see that vision revived and refined and aligned with the consciousness of Islam. We don't have any hesitation acknowledging Thomas Sankara. We're proud of anyone, regardless of their faith, who stands for justice. You know, there were many leaders, heroic leaders in the Global South, particularly in Latin America, who were inspired by the so-called liberation theology within the Catholic Church. Even if their own church hated them for it, we salute them. You know, even those with no faith, who genuinely struggle for the rights of their people, we salute them.
You know what? I respect that. I respect that.
It's a part of our faith. It's a part of our religion to appreciate those who genuinely stand for justice, even if we know that their vision is never going to be complete without Islam. So if you want to be proud of Ibrahim Traore because of just his skin color, go ahead. If you want to be proud of him because of his country or his continent of origin, go ahead. But we're proud of him because of his belief. He's our brother in belief. We're proud of him because of his faith. And anyone who wants to deny that or deny us that, well, you're just petty and foolish.
Okay, Sahid, we hear you. You're calling people petty and foolish for telling you their perspective, but you're telling us yours. At the end of the day, I still respect a lot of the things that he said in this video because it makes sense. But you also need to understand that this struggle for us is different. It's completely different because oppressed people usually bound together for the most part, regardless their religion, race, ethnic group, whatever. Oppressed people have the ability to come together and, you know, empathize with one another based on their oppression. So yes, me and you, me, a typical sub-Saharan African, and you, I don't know if you're from Africa or you're from the Middle East, we can come together to an extent and speak about some commonalities in our oppression. However, we are still different. Because when my people go to Tunisia, when African people, I'm not talking about the North Africans, when sub-Saharan African people go to Tunisia, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, these are countries in Africa, on the continent of Africa. They get called Abdi, which means slaves. So even people from your part of the world look down upon us, sub-Saharan Africans. And I understand one of the reasons why they look down on African people is because we have idiots as leaders. I showed you some of those idiots earlier in the live stream. You know, guys that keep on disrespecting themselves, and in the process of disrespecting themselves, it's going to rub off on us, unfortunately. I mean, I'm talking about complete stooges, like this moron here. This guy is the former president of Ghana. You know, they love these types of leaders, guys that have no integrity, no self-respect. These are the types of African leaders that powerful global leaders love because they are stooges, they are obedient, and they are useless to us. Okay. And while these African leaders are being disrespected all over the world, we get some of that disrespect too, including in your own countries. And that's why you really have to chill on making it a religious thing, because it's not. Nobody cares about that. We, at least we, some of us still do, but many of us that are now enlightened and that want normal societies, we don't care about that religious stuff anymore because we realize that it has only made things worse for us over time. So yeah, this is my reaction to some of what Shahid Bolsen had to say. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put the link to the full conversation in the chat for you to watch it for yourself and then come to your own conclusion. But that's it from here. Before I wrap up the conversation, let me show you some of the clowns that they love. They love these types of leaders in the West. And these are the types of leaders that are the gatekeepers. Okay. They maintain the neo-colonization, the disrespect that African people face all over the world, including on the continent of Africa, in the northern part of Africa. And I'm not claiming that everybody from out there is a bigot. That's not what I'm saying. But our people face bigotry in those parts of the world too. We actually face bigotry every single where, in every part of the world. And it's because we are not respected. Even a lot of our African American cousins, they claim they are indigenous to the continent of America because nobody wants to associate with Africa. And it's human nature, it's human psychology. You don't want to associate with something that you deem to be a failure, something that has no progress. But eventually, when Africa rises, more people, including those that are claiming not to be African, will all claim to be Africa. It's just human psychology. So don't be too mad at those people that say what they say. They are just reacting to what they see.
Greeting Emmanuel Macron. They're sharing a hug there. And he's going to be, President Tinubu is going to be, of course, part of a banquet. And there's the President Macron, here he is greeting the First Lady in France. And there he is sharing a kiss on the cheek there, very European greeting. And President Tinubu of Nigeria now, of course, is going to be part of the banquet. There he is.
Look at that. They were making that announcement with so much pride. Oh, the President Tinubu is look at this guy. This guy says, I love this man, die. Ah, man, our people are so crazy. Fast forward, this video was from 2023 when Tinubu was seeking validation from every Western leader because everybody in Nigeria refused to give him that validation because he clearly robbed the elections. So he's going around the world, you know, as usual, licking the ass of everybody lickable. I showed you Nana Akufo-Addo. Let me show you Paul Biya of Cameroon. Paul Biya, a very nutcase. Paul Biya, in his own situation, he literally is 92 years old. He spends 6 months out of 12 months every year between France and Switzerland. That's how Paul Biya lives his life. He's just simply enjoying his life at this point. I mean, the resources of Cameroon, he's using it to take care of his health. He's contesting one more time in 2025 August for the presidential elections at the age of 92. He has been the president since 1982 for 43 years. And if I ask any one of you guys now, you can put it in the comment section. What do you know about Cameroon? If you've never been to Cameroon, what do you know about Cameroon? I bet you 9 out of 10 of you will say stuff like, oh, it's a poor country, because that's all what we've known about Cameroon. It's poor. And throughout that history of knowing Cameroon as a poor country, this guy has been the president for like 80% of the time. Look at him. And he's going to contest one more time. How come all these guys are running to Macron? Same guy, same Macron, welcoming the same corrupt African politician, Paul Biya. How come? And that's why a lot of African people these days, thankfully, social media is opening their eyes. They are beginning to have serious dislike for the government of France, because they realize that that government, even though it will never allow this type of democracy to fester in France, this is exactly the type of democracy that it wants in Africa. But that's it for my rant this morning. If you like this content, click on the like button, subscribe to the channel. This is the African Wahala. We talk about African issues. These days, there is a lot of noise, clamor for the support of Ibrahim Traore and the Sahel Revolutionary region, Niger Republic and Mali and Burkina Faso. Those guys have given us, they've boosted our morale. A lot of us have some more hope, okay, as far as the African journey is concerned. We're not going to pretend like we haven't been facing the African stigma wherever we find ourselves in the world. Some of you guys haven't even been to Africa before. You were not born in Africa, you were born somewhere else. But the fact that you're of African descent, you still get that work simply because the continent of Africa has not been optimizing its potential. But hopefully, these guys, the Sahelian Revolution, will be the beginning of a new world order, starting from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. But let me know what you think in the comments section. Click on the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the content if you like this type of video. Peace.